Hey everybody, this is Mr. Brooks. This is a supplemental help video for literal equations. And I pulled out two problems from Delta Math on the multi-step equations. And so these are two interesting ones, and there's a lot of algebra here you can get. So I want to give you some hints and do these two problems for you, and you can use this as a model to help you with your assignment. And the most important thing, one big thing is to read what to solve for. So in this case, we're solving for b, and so we want to get b by itself. Now, um, when you look at this, you'll see that there's two terms, and term one and term two, and b is in both. And when you see that what you're looking for, or really when you see anything in both terms like that, you want to kind of think about distributive property. Not that we're going to implement distributive property, but we're actually going to undo distributive property. Because b is multiplied in both terms, you know that b has been distributed to both. And instead of having two b's, it would just be really nice if we had one. And so we're going to undistribute the b. We're going to pull out the b, and that's going to cause it to be m minus 2q. Okay, so if you think about it, if you had that red line first, you would distribute that b to both, and you'd have the same thing. Essentially, all I did was, I don't think I simplified it. When you distribute, you are simplifying. This would be like tidying it up. To me, it's more simple. So then what do you do right here? Well, if you had b times some number, and I said solve for b, you would say, well, it's b times a number, so I'm going to do the inverse operation, and I'm going to divide to cancel. That would leave b by itself. Well, this is the same thing, okay? This m minus 2q is all one number. I know, it's two terms, but all of that you can consider as one number. Remember, you can't combine it because it's not like terms, so it all just kind of stays together. It's what we call a polynomial, many numbers, but it's one value, it's one expression, right? When we did our quiz on the triangle, we had like x minus 2 or whatever it was. This is one value. It's the side length, okay? So over here we divided, so right here we'll divide m minus 2q. And when you take a number and divide it by itself, you get 1, and so it cancels off. And m minus 2q over here, and that's the answer. That right there is is what b is worth. So you solve for b. Okay. All right. So when you see something like this with the same letter in both parts, you should think um, about distributive property. Okay. Here's another one. This is set up as a proportion, and in class we talked about cross multiply divide. So I'm going to cross multiply divide, and then I'm going to do something else where you don't cross multiply and divide, but you do. So you make your little butterfly if you want. R times D is R times D, and then N times B is N times B. And then it says solve for B right there. So what do? You divide both sides by N, and that cancels off. B is equal to RD over N. You can also say DR if you like DR because it's doctor. I think that would be great. What's the name of that called where you can replace RD with DR? You can switch it around. What's that called? Do you know? Commutative property. So it's the commutative property. It applies to multiplication and addition, not to subtraction. So the other thing that somebody did was they looked at this and they said, okay, well, what if we multiply r? So they're just guessing. So multiply by r. That doesn't really help get b by itself, but it does get it where you don't have a fraction over there. Now d divided by b times r, what do? You put it on the top, right? Because when you multiply fractions, you multiply across. So r is on the top, d is on the top. And then from here, it would just be great if b was out of this fraction, because I know if I multiply by the denominator, then I get rid of the fraction. So I'm going to multiply by b, cancels, and now you have b in equals dr, and then you know what to do from here. This is essentially just like cross multiplying. So it's the same thing. So this was kind of like a little guess and check. If you did this the other way, multiply by b first, you would have got that. The only way you could really screw this up is if you multiply by the numerator. So if you're like, well, I want to multiply by d, okay, this would not get you there. And the worst thing you can do is say that this cancels. That does not cancel, right? What would happen is if you multiply by d, you would have d in over r, which is probably not going to help at all. And then this would be d squared over b. And so you really kind of done it now. So that's my help for this section, and hopefully you guys are doing well.